Jamestown and Plymouth were the first two permanent English settlements in America. We're going to focus on learning about Jamestown first. You learned about some of it, some aspects of Jamestown in the video on Friday. Following the mysterious setback of Roanoke Colony, English colonists were planned and financed by joint stock companies to lower the risk of losing money by the people who invested in them. A joint stock company is much like stockholders of a regular modern company, but the English investors bought shares of ownership in joint stock companies. The company used the money it raised to finance colonies in North America. The shareholders would, hopefully in theory, profit from the wealth the colony found in the New World. Jamestown was one of those colonies. Now, a term that you need to know is mercantilism or mercantilism. It's the economic theory that the mother country benefits from the raw materials of the colony. So if you look at the map on the left is of the east coast of America, and this is showing some timber. So if you're looking at timber or tobacco or anything, or cotton later on, those are the raw materials, and they are shipped back to Great Britain, and Great Britain manufactures those into different goods. So mercantilism is where trade is regulated so that the mother country gets most of the profits, and they benefit from raw materials of a colony. And that is a big reason why Great Britain, i.e. the United Kingdom, i.e. England, wanted to start colonies in North America. Now, Jamestown was a joint stock company. It was founded by the Virginia Company. They expected to find gold in the New World, like the Spanish had. The Virginia Company established a colony in 1607 at Jamestown, in Virginia, with more than 100 colonists. They settled in swampy areas, but they could reach their ships quickly and safely if they needed to. Now, they got off to a bad start. By 1608, most of the original settlers had died due to the harsh conditions and a disease called malaria that is carried by mosquitoes. The colonists spent most of their time looking for gold instead of creating the supplies and shelters needed to survive. However, or moreover, most of the settlers were unskilled adventurers and unable to build a strong settlement. They didn't pick the best colonists to bring with them to start Jamestown. Now, John Smith, he was there, and he actually took control of the colony when things got bad. And he forced the colonists to work together to gather food and build proper shelter. So he really said, you need to work or you don't get food. He establishes something called martial law, and any colonist that doesn't work can be whipped and starved. You might think that's harsh, but John Smith was tired of everyone being lazy. By 1609, with Smith's leadership, the colony got organized. Suddenly, John Smith got hurt in a fire, and he had to go back to England on the next ship. So the colonists don't have a leader, and their troubles are starting again. This is where we come into the starving time. In 1609, new colonists arrived, 600 of them. Now, 1609 to 610 was called the starving time because people were starving. 80% of the colonists died. Of 600 colonists, only 60 survived. And due to the relations with the Native Americans, the natives would not trade food. So the colonists, they never intended to grow their own food. They relied on trade, so they had no food source. Survivors stayed when a supply mission from London arrived, but there are only 60 people left. Now, a man arrived at Jamestown named John Rolfe. So he soon discovered a sweeter tasting tobacco and began to grow it. Soon everyone in Jamestown was growing tobacco and selling it to the English and Dutch ships that visited Jamestown. So John Rolfe got there, saw the mess, realized that he could make a profit from this plant called tobacco that he found, and he started making the colonists some money, and then they had a little more leverage with the Native Americans. So the Native Americans were sick of military rule started by John Smith. So they decided to set up a new government. They created the House of Burgesses in 1619. That is where important leaders from each section of Jamestown could go to the House and voice their opinion. It was the first representative government in the Americas. So there's some quotes there. It says, "The honorable man from West Jamestown has the floor. I hereby declare that we take away all available lands from the native population at once. All in favor say aye, aye, aye." Now by 1619, the first servants came to Jamestown, and they were African and English. They were called indentured servants, which means they needed to work off the money they owed. They needed to work off the money they owed so they could buy their own land and live free. Usually it took about 7 years. They wanted to get to the Americas. They essentially borrowed money, went on the ship to the Americas, and had to work off the money that they owed from sailing over. Moreover, a Dutch sailing ship sold 4 Caribbean slaves to the settlers of Jamestown. Now, they still didn't have good relations with the Native Americans. So, a local native group known as the Powhatans grew angry as Jamestown settlers started to claim their lands. And, the problems just kept mounting, so a marriage took place. And yes, that marriage was to Pocahontas. Pocahontas married the tobacco guy, John Rolfe, and the dispute over land was put off for a little while. And then the Native Americans helped Jamestown. They showed the people of Jamestown where to fish and how to grow corn and other things. Without the help from the natives, the Jamestown settlement probably would have failed. Now the peace ended. All good things come to an end. In 1623, the settlers grew too greedy for native lands, and the Powhatans grew angrier and angrier. So Jamestown was attacked and almost burned to the ground. Hundreds of settlers were killed. Now, there was something called Bacon's Rebellion. A Jamestown settler by the name of Nathaniel Bacon thought that taking land from the natives was the best way to become rich. He could grow more tobacco and sell more land to newcomers. The governor of Jamestown, Lord Berkeley, disagreed. Bacon reacted by leading a revolt against Jamestown and ran the governor off. Unfortunately for Bacon, though, he died of disease, and Jamestown was returned to the governor. The natives in Jamestown would survive for a little while longer.